Hello, this is Dr. Nilesh More. I am a consultant physician or internist with Reliance Hospitals, Navi Mumbai, and today we are going to talk about the concerns, the precautions that we need to take during monsoon. We have all been going through this pandemic of coronavirus now, and this monsoon is unusual for us. We are used to going out, going on long drives, being outdoors, eating typical street food, and so on and so forth. To that extent, Corona has cut that all. But let us not forget, at the same time, a monsoon brings its own concerns apart from that, and we cannot overlook those. So one by one, we will talk about what are the precautions and what are the possible ailments that can come during this monsoon. Let us start with food and water. Food and water contamination comes with its own hazards, particularly during monsoon. What I mean is, yes, what is on your mind, I'm talking about diarrheal diseases and dysentery and of course typhoid or enteric fever as it is called. Contaminated food, contaminated water, which can happen because of contamination by people who cook food, who handle, deliver, serve food, and by those people who consume food who are not following hand hygiene practices, can lead to fecal-oral contamination. This is associated with fecal-oral diseases, diarrheal diseases. The commonest organisms include viruses, the rotavirus, the Norwalk virus, the norovirus, and the adenoviruses, which are the DNA viruses, and so on. Viral diarrheas usually are voluminous, watery diarrheas without much complications, and some of them, particularly rotavirus, can come with fever and more common in children, though norovirus can present in adults. The treatment usually is replenishment of the volume or the fluid that is lost along with electrolytes. Antibiotics need not be used for treatment of viral diarrheas, but nonetheless they can be a concern because they can produce significant dehydration. Now, how do you go about this? The oral rehydration salts are readily available in the market as ready-made sachets, which can be diluted in safe water. By that I mean either water which is boiled and cooled or water which is filtered properly as per the EPA standards, and then it can be consumed to replenish the salt and water or the electrolytes along with the volume. Simplest way is it can be prepared at home with half a teaspoon of salt, 5 flat teaspoons of sugar added to a liter of boiled and cooled water if the ORS solution or the ready-made ORS sachets are not available. That is very important. The next are bacterial diarrheas and dysentery. The commonest organisms include the E. coli, the Salmonella, Shigella, and Campylobacter. Now, from where does the source occur? Yes, of course, from contaminated food, from contaminated water, and from consuming undercooked food, undercooked meat, and non-pasteurized milk. So these are the sources. Usually what happens is there can be fever, there can be variable degrees of abdominal pain, in adults more of diarrhea, and in children diarrhea accompanying vomiting are the features. Particularly we have to be careful about Vibrio cholerae. You must have heard about the disease called cholera. Why is cholera a concern? Because within a matter of hours, in around 24 hours, it can produce significant volume loss, dehydration that can lead to shock and multi-organ failure. So that is the concern. So the primary concern in bacterial as well as in viral diarrheas is to replenish the fluid and the electrolytes that are getting lost. The antibiotics can be started for bacterial diseases and for bacterial diarrheas, including Shigella dysentery. By dysentery, we mean there is crampy abdominal pain and there is a continuous or frequent small volume mucopurulent diarrhea which comes with mucus and pus and sometimes can be blood stain. So that is the Shiga or Shiga toxin related shigellosis or Shigella dysentery. What is very important is that in the tropical areas, Shigella, which can produce bloody diarrhea, can be a concern because it can lead to a major complication called hemolytic uremic syndrome, which is characterized by lysis of the red blood cells, damage to the liver, and kidney injury, which might require ICU care for a long period of time. So that is a major concern. When we talk about these food and waterborne diseases, what we need to remember is that prevention is better than cure, and the precautions that we need to take are: number one, practice very good hand hygiene. Wash hands properly before meal. Wash hands properly after the use of toilet. Ensure that when you are out on a restaurant or taking food from a street vendor, you got to be sure about the hand hygiene and other hygienic practices that these people are following. If you're not, you could be risking getting diarrhea or dysentery for that matter. So that is as far as food and waterborne diseases or infections are concerned. Another important concern is, of course, typhoid fever caused by Salmonella entericus, Serovar typhi and paratyphi, and this is characterized by a incubation period varying between 10 to 14 days and associated in around 75 to 80% of cases with fever, and in around 30 to 40% of cases with appearance of abdominal pain, discomfort, loose motion sometimes, but constipation can be there sometimes, and occurrence of what can be called as pinkish rash, what are called as rose spots on the trunk, that is on the front of the chest and on the back, in around 30 to 40% of the people. We all know about typhoid fever. It can go on and on if it is untreated for longer than 4 weeks. It can lead to complications like perforation or damage to the intestine and medical and surgical emergencies. So again, a very significant concern for another foodborne disease, salmonellosis or typhoid fever, or a collective term called enteric fever.